In the British Museum, there is an amulet about the length of your thumb, 5 centimeters, 26th dynasty. It is an eye, and you already know it. The museum's record explains the word. Wedjat, the sound one, the eye plucked out in a battle with Seth, healed by Thoth. Then it says something almost nobody repeats. This example, like many others, represents the right eye, not the left, not the moon eye everybody names. So here is what this episode owes you. Horus is not a god of war, and that mistake has a name. The falcon on the front of him does not identify him, and the specialists say so in print. And whether he was the son of Osiris or the brother of Osiris was never settled by the Egyptians themselves. Not lost, never settled. Start with the war, because that one is not interpretation. It is counting. Open the standard God-by-God reference, Richard Wilkinson's Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt, and count every place the book calls somebody a war god, a god of war, or a warrior deity. There are 17. Not one of them is Horus. The names that come up are Montu, and Onuris, and Baal, and Reshep, and Anat, and Neith, and Apedamak, and Mahes, and Seth, and Sopdu, and the Aten. Horus has his own entry, 4 pages of it, and the war god label is not in it. So where does the error come from? An error this widespread usually has a source, and this one begins on the very last page of the Horus entry in the same book. Montu, venerated in Thebes, is described there as the falcon-headed war god. Read that again. Falcon-headed. Egypt had more than one falcon god, and the one carrying the war portfolio was not Horus. And here is the part that makes the confusion genuinely old, rather than modern. Wilkinson says Montu came to be associated with Horus under the name Horus of the strong arm. So the merge is real, it is ancient, and it runs the other way from what you would expect. Egypt did not make Horus a war god. It gave its war god a Horus name. So if the falcon is not proof of war, what is it proof of? Less than you would think. A specialist writing in the UCLA Encyclopedia of Egyptology, the peer-reviewed digital reference for the field, puts it flatly. In Egypt, a deity can take different shapes, or a certain shape can be taken by different deities. And on the bird, specifically, that although the falcon tends to be a rather generic symbol for the divine in general, it might also express overlappings with Horus. A rather generic symbol for the divine in general. The falcon is closer to a font than to a face. Another entry in the same encyclopedia generalizes it, that while a rigidly fixed iconography for a given god was uncommon, many deities appeared in several guises, and that the greater the god, or goddess, the wider the range of associations and identities the deity might have, which inverts the thing we usually assume. We treat a god's fixed look as the sign of a major god. In Egypt, being major is exactly what made the look stop being fixed. Horus is where that rule bites hardest, and it is why the tidy card fails. The bird tells you that you are looking at something divine. It does not tell you which divine thing you are looking at. Even the species is hedged in the literature, probably the lanner or the peregrine. Here is the promise I owe you, and it is the strangest thing in the research. Take one article, a single peer-reviewed entry on Egyptian creation by one author, and read it end to end. Horus appears in it in 4 ways that cannot all be true at once. In the first, the earth and the sky have 5 children, and the list is Osiris, Horus, Seth, Isis, and Nephthys. 5, not 4. Horus is Osiris's brother, born alongside him. In the second, elsewhere in the same entry, he is the familiar one, the son of Osiris and Isis. In the third, at Komombo, the texts identify Onuris, the elder Horus, with the god Shu, and name him among the progenitors of Osiris, a generation above his own father. And in the fourth, at Philae, Horus, son of Isis, is praised as the creator of the gods, brother, son, ancestor, creator. Same god, same article, 4 positions in the family tree, and Wilkinson, writing the standard reference, does not resolve it either. He sets out the 2 possibilities, that this was originally a separate deity with whom the ancient falcon god was fused, or that the falcon deity was incorporated into the Osiris family in a very different form as a divine infant, and he leaves it standing there, open. That is not a gap in our knowledge. That is the state of the evidence. If nobody could say what Horus was, everybody knew what he did, and it was the most important job in Egypt. Pharaoh after pharaoh carried a Horus name. It came first in the royal titulary, written inside the serek, the device in which the king's name was written, with a falcon standing on top of it. And it was not the only one. The same titulary carried a second Horus name further along, the golden Horus name. A king was introduced by this god, and then introduced by him again. And the early ones are not gentle. Nama, whose Horus name is read as the menacing catfish. Aha, the fighter. Den, the cutter. Ajib, the slaughterer of hearts. These are not epithets somebody gave the king. This is the king announcing himself as Horus, in the slot where Horus goes. The doctrine was that the living king was the falcon god walking around, and Wilkinson dates that idea to perhaps the very beginning of the dynastic period, which is why the exception is so loud. In the second dynasty, Wilkinson says, the figure of Seth appears on the serek of a king named Peribzan, Seth, the god from the battle that cost Horus the eye we started with, standing where the falcon belongs. And on the serek of Kasekemwi, Seth appears together with Horus, both animals on one king's name. That is a fight about what the king is, conducted in the spelling of his own name. And underneath all of that, there was a completely different Horus, the one ordinary Egyptians actually used, and he has almost nothing to do with kingship. In the Metropolitan Museum, there is a slab of dark stone called the Stela. It stands nearly 84 centimeters tall. It weighs over 52 kilograms, and it is covered in rows of hieroglyphs recording 13 magic spells against venomous bites and wounds, and to cure the illnesses caused by them. The museum explains how it worked. A victim could recite the spells or drink water that had been poured over the words and images carved into the stone. The stone was medicine, and the reason it worked, according to the inscription around its base, is a precedent, the magic cure that was worked upon the infant Horus by Thoth. Horus, as a baby, was stung in the marshes and was healed. So every person who poured water over one of these stones was invoking the time the god himself was a child who needed saving. Large ones stood in temple precincts, where priests poured water over them. Smaller ones were used at home. The very smallest were worn as amulets. One of them carries a translated spell that opens, "Hail to you, Horus, come forth from Osiris, born of Isis, the goddess," and later says, "I am Horus the Savior." Which brings us to the version of Horus that is probably why you are here, because the most watched video we could find about him claims he is the original Jesus Christ. Virgin born, 12 followers. It is worth being precise about this, so here is the most useful thing anyone has done with it. In 2004, W. Ward Gask emailed 20 leading Egyptologists across 6 countries and asked them directly. 10 replied. On the 3 writers the claim rests on, only one of the 10 experts had ever heard of any of them, and Kenneth Kitchen of Liverpool pointed out that none of the three appears in Beerbria's Who Was Who in Egyptology at all. On the virgin birth, as reported by Gask, all of them recognized that the image of the infant Horus with Isis influenced Christian pictures of the Madonna and Child, and said that is where the similarity stops, because there is no evidence for the idea that Horus was virgin-born. On the 12, no evidence that Horus was a fisher of men, or that his followers were ever 12 in number. And the Egyptian record says something better than a denial. Horus has a birthday, and it is one of the days added at the end of the Egyptian year to bring it to 365, not midwinter. His conception happens after his father is already dead and revived, which is the opposite of a virgin birth. It is a posthumous one. The phrase followers of Horus is real, and the Turin canon uses it for the pre-dynastic rulers of Egypt. Egypt did have a virgin birth story, and Wilkinson, citing Herodotus, gives it to a bull at Memphis, born of a cow impregnated by the god Ptah. The real Horus is a god nobody could pin down, whose bird was a generic sign, whose war record belonged to somebody else, and who spent his working life being poured over sick people as medicine. That is stranger than the borrowed version, and it has the advantage of being what the evidence says.